You know how they say some stories are too good to be true? Well, let me tell you about Marcus Sullivan and the woman who turned his perfectly ordered world completely upside down. This isn't just another love story. This is about secrets that could destroy empires, betrayals that cut deeper than any knife, and the kind of love that either saves you or ruins you completely. Marcus Sullivan wasn't just rich. He was Silicon Valley royalty, the kind of man whose name appeared on Forbes covers and whose every word could send stock prices soaring or crashing. At 34, he'd built Technova from a garage startup into a billion-dollar empire that revolutionized how the world connected. But success, as he was about to learn, had a way of making you forget what really mattered. It was a Thursday evening in downtown San Francisco when everything changed. Marcus had just finished another grueling 16-hour day, the kind that left his assistant wondering if he ever actually went home. His penthouse office overlooked the city like a modern castle, all glass and steel and cold ambition. He was reviewing acquisition reports when his phone buzzed with a text from his business partner, James Crawford. "You need to get out more. There's this art gallery opening tonight, so at least pretend to have a life outside spreadsheets." Marcus almost ignored it. Almost. But something about the endless rows of numbers blurring together on his screen made him pause. When was the last time he'd done something that wasn't calculated for business advantage? When had he last felt anything? The Meridian Gallery was the kind of place where San Francisco's elite went to be seen appreciating culture. Marcus arrived fashionably late, his black Tesla pulling up to a sidewalk already crowded with photographers and society columnists. He straightened his custom suit jacket and prepared for another evening of networking disguised as leisure. But the moment he stepped inside, something shifted. The gallery hummed with conversation and the soft clink of champagne glasses. But Marcus found himself drawn toward the back wall, where a series of paintings hung in dramatic spotlighting. They weren't like anything he'd seen before. Abstract but somehow deeply personal. Swirls of midnight blue and silver that seemed to capture loneliness itself. Each piece felt like looking into someone's soul, raw and vulnerable and breathtakingly beautiful. "They're incredible, aren't they?" The voice came from beside him, soft and slightly husky. Marcus turned and felt the world tilt slightly off its axis. She was standing just close enough that he could catch the faint scent of jasmine and paint, an unusual combination that somehow worked perfectly. Her hair was dark auburn, falling in loose waves past her shoulders, and she wore a simple black dress that managed to be both elegant and effortless. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold, deep green with flecks of gold, holding secrets he suddenly desperately wanted to uncover. "Oh." "Yes," he managed, though he was no longer looking at the paintings. "They are." She smiled, a slow curve of lips that made something warm unfold in his chest. The artist calls this series Digital Solitude. It's about how connected we are to everything except ourselves. Mosh. "Sounds like they know something about the tech world," Marcus said, attempting humor while his brain tried to process why this stranger was affecting him so profoundly. "Maybe they do. She tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made him feel exposed. "You're Marcus Sullivan, It wasn't a question, and somehow that disappointed him. He was used to being recognized, but he'd hoped for just a few more minutes of being nobody special. "Guilty as charged," he said, "though I was hoping to fly under the radar tonight." "Sorry to disappoint you," but she didn't sound sorry at all. "I'm Elena." Just Elena. No last name. No explanation of how she knew him or why she was here. Most people in his world came with business cards and agendas. Elena came with mystery. They talked for 2 hours. About art, about the city, about everything except the obvious questions hanging between them. She was intelligent without being pretentious, funny without trying too hard, and completely unimpressed by his wealth and status. When someone approached to discuss a potential business deal, she simply melted away into the crowd, leaving Marcus standing there with the strangest sense that he'd just lost something precious. He found her again by the exit, pulling on a worn leather jacket that probably cost less than his tie. "Can I see you again?" The words tumbled out before he could second-guess them. Elena paused, her hand on the door handle. For a moment, she looked almost scared, but then that enigmatic smile returned. "Maybe you will," she said, and walked out into the San Francisco night. Marcus stood there for a full minute, feeling like he'd just been hit by lightning. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with urgent emails and market updates, but for the first time in years, he ignored them. The next few days passed in a haze of distraction. Marcus found himself checking the gallery's website obsessively, looking for any information about the mysterious Elena. He drove past the building twice, telling himself he was just in the neighborhood. His assistant, Sarah, actually asked if he was feeling well when he stared out the window during a board meeting, instead of dominating the discussion as usual. "Sir," she ventured after the last executive had filed out, "the Peterson contract needs your signature." Marcus blinked, refocusing on the present. "Right. Of course." But as he signed the documents, his mind wandered back to green eyes and jasmine perfume and paintings that seemed to understand his soul. It was James who finally intervened. Marcus's business partner and oldest friend had watched the normally laser-focused mogul drift through 3 days of meetings like a lovesick teenager. "Okay, what's going on?" James demanded, cornering Marcus in his office Friday evening. "You've signed 2 contracts without reading them. You forgot about the Goldman call. And I'm pretty sure you just agreed to sponsor a charity gala for rescued sea turtles without knowing what you were saying yes to." Marcus leaned back in his chair, suddenly feeling exhausted. "There was this woman at the gallery opening." "Ah." James's expression shifted to understanding. "The mysterious Elena that Sarah mentioned you've been asking about." "You know her?" "I know of her. Elena Reeves. She's an artist. Quite a good one. Actually, keeps a low profile, doesn't do the social scene much. Word is she values her privacy above everything else." "Reeves," Finally, a last name. Marcus filed the information away like the data-hungry executive he was. She's different, Marcus said, aware of how inadequate the words sounded. Different how? She looked at me like I was just a person, not a business opportunity or a networking contact or a stepping stone to something bigger. Just me. James was quiet for a moment. When's the last time that happened? Marcus couldn't remember. Maybe never. There's a problem, though, James continued carefully. Elena Reeves isn't exactly the kind of woman who runs in our circles. She's talented, sure, but she's not. He gestured vaguely at the luxury surrounding them. Not what? Not one of us. Marcus. She's an artist living in a converted warehouse in the Mission District. No trust fund, no family connections, no safety net. If you're looking for someone to play the role of tech mogul's girlfriend at charity galas and board dinners, she's not your girl. Something hot and defensive flared in Marcus's chest. Maybe I don't want someone to play a role. James raised his hands in surrender. I'm just saying, be careful. You've worked too hard building this empire to let emotions cloud your judgment. But as Marcus stared out at the city lights that night, he wondered if maybe his judgment had been clouded for years by ambition, by the relentless pursuit of more. Maybe what he needed wasn't clearer vision, but the courage to see with his heart instead of his spreadsheets. He found her the next morning at a farmer's market in the Mission District, of all places. She was examining organic tomatoes with the same intensity she'd shown while studying art, her hair pulled back in a messy bun and paint stains on her fingers. She wore jeans and a faded t-shirt and looked more beautiful than any woman in a designer gown. Fancy meeting you here, he said, approaching carefully as if she might bolt like a startled deer. Elena looked up, and for just a moment, pure joy flashed across her face before she schooled it into mild surprise. Marcus Sullivan shops for vegetables. I have many hidden talents. Such as? I make an excellent omelet, oh. She laughed, the sound bright and genuine. Now that I'd like to see. It was an opening, and Marcus took it without hesitation. How about I prove it? I'll cook. You provide the conversation. Elena studied him for a long moment, and again he caught that flicker of something. Fear? Uncertainty? But then she smiled. Okay, but I'm warning you. I have very high omelet standards. Oh. Marcus's penthouse apartment was exactly what Elena had expected. All clean lines and expensive furniture, and a view that probably cost more than most people made in a year. But what surprised her was how cold it felt, like a showroom rather than a home. Do you actually live here? She asked, running her fingers along the marble countertop in his designer kitchen. I sleep here, Marcus admitted, pulling ingredients from a refrigerator that looked barely used. Living implies having a life, which is apparently something I need to work on. Elena watched him move around the kitchen with surprising competence. His expensive shirt sleeves rolled up, a small frown of concentration on his face as he whisked eggs. There was something endearing about seeing the powerful tech mogul focused so intently on something as simple as breakfast. "Tell me about the paintings," he said as he worked. "The ones at the gallery. They felt so personal." Elena's hands stilled on the coffee mug she'd been holding. "What makes you think that?" "The way you talked about them. Like you understood exactly what the artist was trying to say." She was quiet for so long that Marcus looked up from the stove, wondering if he'd overstepped. But Elena was staring out at the city below, her expression distant. "Sometimes I think we're all just islands," she said finally, "surrounded by all this noise and connection, but fundamentally alone." The paintings were about that feeling, about being in a room full of people and still feeling like you're the only person in the world. Marcus plated the omelet with hands that were steadier than they had any right to be given how her words had affected him. Because she'd just described exactly how he'd felt for years, even before he'd met her. "You sound like you speak from experience." "Huh?" Elena accepted the plate with a small smile. "Don't we all?" They ate in comfortable silence, looking out at the city waking up below them. Marcus found himself studying her profile, the way morning light caught the gold in her eyes, the small scar on her chin that he hadn't noticed before. "Can I ask you something?" he said eventually. "Shoot." "Why did you agree to come here? You don't seem like the type to be impressed by all this." He gestured at the expensive view, the luxury surrounding them. Elena set down her fork and looked at him directly. "Because you asked me about the paintings instead of how much money they cost. Because you looked at them like they meant something instead of like they were investments. And because..." She paused, color rising in her cheeks. "Because when you look at me, I don't feel invisible." The honesty in her voice hit Marcus like a physical blow. He reached across the table without thinking, covering her hand with his. "You could never be invisible." The touch sent electricity up Elena's arm, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her hand palm up, lacing their fingers together. "This is dangerous," she whispered. "Why?" But Elena didn't answer, because the truth was too complicated and too terrifying to speak aloud. Instead, she squeezed his hand and let herself imagine, just for a moment, what it would be like to be honest with him about everything. That afternoon, Marcus did something he hadn't done in 5 years. He turned off his phone and canceled his meetings. Instead, he let Elena show him her San Francisco, the one that existed beyond boardrooms and exclusive restaurants. They walked through Golden Gate Park, fed ducks at the pond, and sat on a bench sharing terrible coffee from a food truck. "Tell me about growing up," Elena said, curled against his side as they watched street performers entertain a small crowd. "Not much to tell. My parents were both engineers, very practical people. They taught me that success came from hard work and smart decisions. Art was frivolous, emotions were inefficient, and business was the only thing that mattered." "That sounds lonely." "Oh." Marcus considered this. I thought it was normal, until... Until I met someone who showed me what I'd been missing. Elena felt her heart skip, but she forced herself to keep her voice light. Anyone I know? I think you do. Marcus turned to face her fully, his expression serious. Elena, I know this is fast, and I know we barely know each other, but I haven't felt this alive in years. You make me want to be better than just another tech executive in an expensive suit. Elena's throat tightened. Marcus. I'm not asking for promises or declarations. I'm just asking for a chance. Let me take you to dinner. Let me learn what makes you laugh, and what makes you cry, and how you like your coffee in the morning. The hope in his voice was almost unbearable. Elena closed her eyes, fighting a war between her heart and her carefully constructed walls. Okay, she whispered. One dinner. But even as she said it, she knew it wouldn't be just one dinner. She was already falling, and the landing was going to hurt more than anything she'd ever experienced. That dinner turned into 3, then 5. Then Marcus stopped counting and just started living from one moment with Elena to the next. She was unlike anyone he'd ever known. She could discuss quantum physics and impressionist painting with equal passion. She laughed at his terrible jokes and called him out when his ego got too big. She made him want to be worthy of the way she looked at him, like he was someone worth believing in. But Elena remained carefully mysterious about her past, deflecting personal questions with humor or changing the subject so smoothly that Marcus barely noticed until later. She never let him pick her up at home, always meeting him at restaurants or galleries or parks. Her phone number went to voicemail more often than not, and she never seemed to check social media. It's like she doesn't exist online, Marcus confided to James 3 weeks into whatever this was becoming. Maybe that's the point, James replied. Some people value privacy. But Marcus was starting to suspect it was more than that. Elena guarded her secrets like they were made of spun glass, and he was beginning to understand that pushing too hard might shatter whatever was growing between them. The breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday evening. They'd planned to see a movie, but a sudden downpour had driven them into a small cafe near the Mission District. Elena seemed nervous, constantly checking her phone and glancing toward the windows. Are you expecting someone? Marcus asked. No. I don't usually come to this part of town much anymore. It was a lie, and they both knew it. The cafe owner had greeted her by name, and she'd navigated the menu without looking at it. This was clearly somewhere she came often. Elena, what are you so afraid of? She looked up from her untouched coffee, and for the first time since he'd known her, Marcus saw genuine fear in her eyes. You want the truth? She said quietly. Always. The truth is that I'm not who you think I am. The truth is that if you really knew me, you'd run so fast you'd leave skid marks. The truth is that I've been lying to you about almost everything since the moment we met. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. What kind of lies? Elena was quiet for so long, he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she pulled out her phone, scrolled through something, and turned the screen toward him. It was a news article from 2 years ago. The headline read, "Notorious hacker Phoenix revealed to be Elena Reeves, former tech prodigy turned cyber criminal." Marcus stared at the screen, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. The photo showed Elena being led away in handcuffs, her face defiant despite the circumstances. "Phoenix," he whispered. Elena nodded, her face pale. "I was 22 when I first hacked into a major corporation's systems. It started as activism, exposing companies that were polluting or exploiting workers. But it spiraled. I got addicted to the challenge, to the power of bringing down systems that seemed untouchable." Marcus's hands were shaking as he handed the phone back. You were a cyber terrorist." "I prefer digital activist with poor judgment," Elena said with a weak attempt at humor. "But yes, I spent 3 years as one of the FBI's most wanted. I hacked banks, exposed government secrets, took down websites of companies I thought were corrupt. I thought I was fighting the good fight." "What happened?" "I got caught. Turned out one of my contacts was an undercover federal agent. I served 18 months in minimum security prison and got out 2 years ago on condition that I never touch a computer for anything more complex than checking email." Marcus felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. "The art is real. I discovered painting in prison. Actually, it was the only thing that kept me sane." Elena's voice was getting smaller with each confession. "But the gallery showing? That was my first and probably last. Most people in the art world won't touch me once they know who I am." "And you didn't think I deserved to know this?" "I was going to tell you." The words tumbled out in a rush. "I wanted to tell you so many times, but then you'd look at me like I hung the moon, and I knew that once you knew the truth, you'd never look at me that way again." Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Several other patrons looked over, but he barely noticed. "I need air," he said. "Marcus, please." But he was already walking away, leaving Elena sitting alone in the cafe, with the ruins of her carefully constructed new life scattered around her like broken glass. Outside, the rain had intensified, soaking through Marcus's expensive jacket within seconds. He stood on the sidewalk, letting the cold water run down his face as he tried to process what he'd just learned. Elena Reeves, Phoenix, one of the most notorious hackers in recent history, sitting in his apartment, making him omelets and talking about art. The woman he was falling in love with was exactly the kind of person his company spent millions protecting against. His phone buzzed with a text from James. "Board meeting moved to 8 a.m. tomorrow. Don't forget." Marcus stared at the message, suddenly seeing his life with painful clarity. Board meetings and profit margins and a world where Elena's past would make her a liability. A scandal waiting to destroy everything he'd built. But as he stood there in the rain, what he remembered wasn't the news article or the criminal record. He remembered the way Elena had looked at those paintings like they were windows into her soul. The way she'd held his hand in his apartment and whispered that this was dangerous. The way she'd made him feel like he was finally awake after years of sleepwalking through his own life. By the time he made it back to the cafe, Elena was gone. Marcus spent the next week in a state that could only be described as controlled chaos. During the day, he functioned normally, attending meetings, making decisions, managing his empire with the same ruthless efficiency that had made him a billionaire. But at night, he found himself driving past places they'd been together, checking his phone obsessively for messages that never came. He tried reaching out once, texting a simple, "We need to talk," but Elena's response was swift and final. "I'm sorry. You deserve better than someone with my baggage. Please don't contact me again." "You look like hell," Sarah observed on Friday afternoon, bringing him his fourth coffee of the day. "Thank you for that brutally honest assessment. Sir, with respect, whatever's going on with you personally is starting to affect your work." The Peterson deal fell through because you seemed distracted during the negotiation, and you've rescheduled the Goldman meeting 3 times. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building. "I'm fine. Sarah. No offense, but you're really not." Before Marcus could respond, James appeared in the doorway. "We need to talk," he said, his expression grim. Sarah took the hint and left, closing the door behind her. James settled into the chair across from Marcus's desk, studying his friend with concern. "Okay, what's really going on? And don't tell me you're fine, because I've known you for 15 years and I've never seen you like this." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city below. "Do you remember when we started Technova? What we said we wanted to accomplish? We wanted to change the world." "Right. Change the world. Make technology serve humanity instead of the other way around." Marcus laughed bitterly. "When did we stop caring about that? When did it become just about profit margins and market share?" James frowned. "Marcus, we employ 10,000 people. We've revolutionized communication technology. We've made a real difference in the world. Have we? Or have we just made ourselves very rich while telling ourselves a convenient story about changing the world? This is about Elena, isn't it?" Marcus finally looked at his friend. "Do you know who she really is?" "I know she's an artist who's got you questioning everything you've ever worked for." "She's Phoenix." James went very still. "Phoenix? Hacker who exposed 37 major corporations for environmental crimes. Yes, who revealed government surveillance programs that violated citizens' privacy. Who cost those companies millions of dollars and forced them to clean up their acts. Who was also a cyber terrorist responsible for countless security breaches and privacy violations." Was she? Marcus leaned forward. Or was she someone who saw injustice and tried to fight it the only way she knew how? "Marcus, you can't be serious. This woman is exactly the kind of threat we've built our entire security infrastructure to defend against. Maybe that's the problem. James stood up, beginning to pace. The problem? The problem is that you're letting your feelings for a criminal cloud your judgment. Do you have any idea what would happen if the board found out you were involved with Phoenix? If our shareholders discovered that the CEO of a major tech company was romantically involved with someone who made her living destroying companies like ours? I don't care about the board. Well, you should. James's voice rose. Because they care about this company's reputation, and they care about our stock price, and they care about our relationships with corporate clients who trust us to keep their data safe from people exactly like your girlfriend. She's not. Marcus started to say Elena wasn't his girlfriend, but the words stuck in his throat. Because what was she? What had she been to him? Look, James said, his voice gentler now. I know you have feelings for her, but you have to think about the bigger picture here. You've worked too hard to let this destroy everything. Marcus turned back to the window, watching the city pulse with life below. What if I don't want everything we've built? What if I want something real instead? Then you're having a midlife crisis, and you need to snap out of it before it costs both of us everything. But as James left, Marcus found himself thinking about Elena's words in the cafe. About the truth, and how maybe the truth was that he'd been living someone else's version of success for so long that he'd forgotten what actually mattered to him. That night, Marcus did something he hadn't done in years. He went home to his empty penthouse, poured himself a drink, and really looked at his life. The expensive furniture that felt like a hotel. The awards and magazine covers that celebrated his business success, but said nothing about who he was as a person. The phone that buzzed constantly with people who wanted something from him, but never asked how he was doing. For the first time in his adult life, Marcus Sullivan felt poor. The next morning brought a crisis that would change everything. Marcus was reviewing quarterly reports when Sarah burst into his office without knocking, her face pale. Sir, you need to see this immediately. She handed him a tablet displaying a tech news website. The headline made his blood run cold. Technova security breach. Millions of user data records exposed. When? Marcus asked, his voice deadly calm. The breach happened sometime last night. It's bad, sir. Customer records, private communications, financial information, everything, all. Marcus's mind raced through the implications. This wasn't just a business crisis. It was a catastrophe that could destroy Technova and ruin the lives of millions of users who had trusted them with their most private information. Have we identified the source? The forensics team is working on it, but preliminary analysis suggests it was an inside job. Someone with high-level access deliberately opened our systems to external attack. Who? We don't know yet. But sir, there's something else. The media is already connecting this to your relationship with Elena Reeves. Tech blogs are speculating that Phoenix orchestrated this attack using insider information. Marcus felt the world tilt. That's impossible. Elena wouldn't. Sir, with respect, how well do you really know her? The question hit like a physical blow. Because the truth was, he didn't know Elena at all. She'd lied about everything else. Why not this? Get me a meeting with the forensics team, Marcus said. Now. The next few hours passed in a blur of emergency meetings and damage control. The forensics team confirmed that the attack had been sophisticated and targeted, suggesting insider knowledge of Technova's security protocols. The breach had exposed the personal data of over 50 million users, making it one of the largest cyber attacks in corporate history. The attack vector suggests someone with intimate knowledge of our systems, the head of cybersecurity explained. This wasn't a random hack. This was surgical, designed to cause maximum damage while avoiding detection until it was too late. Any leads on who might have had that level of access? We're investigating all senior staff. But sir, the man hesitated. Given your recent association with Elena Reeves, we have to consider the possibility that she gained access to sensitive information through your relationship. Marcus felt sick. You're suggesting she seduced me to get access to our systems? I'm suggesting it's a possibility we can't ignore. Before Marcus could respond, James entered the conference room with an expression that promised more bad news. The board is calling an emergency meeting, he announced. They want answers, and they want them now. The board meeting was a nightmare. 12 of the most powerful people in Silicon Valley, all staring at Marcus with expressions ranging from disappointment to barely contained fury. Let me see if I understand this correctly, said Margaret Chen, the board chair. Our CEO has been romantically involved with a known cyber criminal, and now we've suffered the worst security breach in our company's history. Does anyone else see a pattern here? There's no proof that Elena had anything to do with this, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Proof? Harold Morrison, the lead investor, laughed harshly. We don't need proof for a congressional investigation, which is exactly what we're going to get. We don't need proof for our stock price to crater, which it already has. And we don't need proof for our users to lose faith in our ability to protect their data. Margaret leaned forward. Marcus, you're a brilliant businessman, but your judgment appears to be severely compromised. The board has discussed this, and we're prepared to offer you a choice. Marcus felt cold dread settling in his stomach. What kind of choice? You can resign immediately with a generous severance package and save what's left of your reputation. Or we can vote you out as CEO and make this much messier for everyone involved. The room fell silent. Marcus looked around at faces he'd known for years, people he'd considered allies if not friends. But all he saw now was calculation and self-preservation. You're firing me. We're giving you the opportunity to leave with dignity, Margaret corrected. But yes, your time as CEO of Technova is over. Marcus stood slowly, feeling like he was moving through water. I need time to consider. You have until Monday morning, Harold said. Make the right choice, Marcus. As Marcus left the boardroom, he felt James's hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, his oldest friend said quietly. I tried to warn you. But Marcus barely heard him, because all he could think about was Elena's face in that cafe, the fear in her eyes when she'd told him the truth. Had that fear been about losing him, or about being caught? That weekend, Marcus retreated to his penthouse and tried to make sense of his shattered world. The media was having a field day with the story. The tech mogul brought down by a criminal mastermind. His photo was on every tech blog and business magazine, usually next to Elena's mugshot from 2 years ago. He found himself staring at that photo for hours, trying to reconcile the defiant young woman in handcuffs with the vulnerable artist who had held his hand and talked about loneliness. Which one was real? Had any of it been real? On Sunday evening, his doorman called to announce a visitor. There's a woman here to see you, sir. Says her name is Elena Reeves. Marcus's heart stopped. Send her up, huh? Elena looked terrible. Her face was pale and drawn, her eyes red-rimmed as if she'd been crying for days. She stood in his doorway like a ghost of everything he'd thought he wanted. I know you probably don't want to see me, she said without preamble. But I had to tell you, I didn't do this. The attack on your company, I had nothing to do with it. Marcus stepped aside to let her in, but he didn't move closer. How do I know that? Because I'm telling you the truth. Like you told me the truth about who you were? Elena flinched as if he'd slapped her. I never lied about who I am now. I lied about who I used to be. And what's the difference? The difference is that I haven't touched a computer for anything more complex than email in 2 years. The difference is that I would never hurt you, even if it meant protecting myself. The difference is that I love you. The words hung in the air between them, like a bridge neither of them knew how to cross. You love me, Marcus repeated flatly. I love you, and that's why I'm here even though I know you'll never believe me. Because I can't let you think that everything between us was a lie. The feelings, the connection, the way you made me want to be better than my worst mistakes, that was real. Was the most real thing in my life. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. Elena. I know my past makes me a suspect. I know it looks like I used you to get access to your company. But Marcus, you have to believe me. I would never destroy something you built. I would never hurt you like that. Then who did? I don't know, but I have an idea how to find out. Marcus stared at her. What do you mean? I still have contacts in the hacker community. People who would know if someone was planning something this big. Let me help you find the real culprit. Elena, you can't get involved in this. If anyone finds out you're investigating, they'll what? Arrest me? Ruin my reputation? In case you haven't noticed, I don't have much left to lose. You could go back to prison. And you could lose everything you've worked for. Elena stepped closer, and Marcus caught that familiar scent of jasmine and paint. Let me help you. Let me prove that I'm not the enemy. Every rational part of Marcus's mind screamed that this was a trap, that trusting Elena again would complete his destruction. But looking into her eyes, seeing the desperate honesty there, he found himself nodding. What do you need? The next 48 hours were the longest of Marcus's life. Elena disappeared into the digital underground, using contacts and methods she couldn't explain to track the source of the attack on Technova. Marcus waited, suspended between hope and despair, while his world continued to crumble around him. The media attention was relentless. Reporters camped outside his building. His phone rang constantly with interview requests, and his social media feeds filled with speculation about his relationship with Phoenix and whether he'd been complicit in the attack. James stopped by Monday morning, looking haggard. "Have you made your decision?" he asked. "Not yet." "Marcus, you're out of time. The board is meeting in 2 hours, and if you don't resign, they're going to vote you out. At least if you resign, you can control the narrative." "What if I told you I might have proof that Elena didn't do this?" James rubbed his temples. "Then I'd say you're grasping at straws because you can't accept that you were played by a professional." She's not what? Not a criminal? Not someone who makes her living destroying companies exactly like ours? Marcus, you're a smart man. Stop letting your heart override your brain. But Marcus's brain was telling him something different now. It was telling him that Elena's reaction when he'd shown her his apartment, the way she'd asked if he actually lived there, suggested someone who understood loneliness, not someone calculating how to exploit him. It was telling him that her fear in the cafe had been about losing him, not about being caught in a scheme. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. Unknown number. "Marcus, it's me." Elena's voice was tight with exhaustion and excitement. "I found something. Can you meet me?" "Where?" "The warehouse where I live. I'll text you the address. And Marcus, come alone. If this is what I think it is, you're going to want to hear it before anyone else does." Elena's warehouse was in an industrial district that looked like something from a post-apocalyptic movie. Marcus's Tesla seemed absurdly out of place among the graffitied buildings and broken streetlights. He found the address Elena had sent, a converted warehouse with her name on a small placard next to a heavy metal door. She answered on the first knock, pulling him inside quickly and checking the street before closing the door behind them. "Did anyone follow you?" "I don't think so. Elena, what's going on?" Instead of answering, she led him through a space that was clearly both home and art studio. Canvases covered the walls, some finished paintings that took his breath away, others works in progress that showed Elena's raw talent. But it was the corner dominated by computer equipment that made Marcus stop short. "I thought you weren't allowed to use computers." "I'm not." Technically, Elena's voice was grim, but desperate times call for desperate measures. "Marcus, the attack on your company, it wasn't random. And it wasn't just about stealing data. She gestured to the screens, which showed lines of code and network diagrams that meant nothing to Marcus, but clearly told Elena a story. Someone used the breach to plant malware throughout your entire system, not just to steal information, but to create a backdoor for future attacks. This was the first phase of something much bigger. Bigger how? Your company doesn't just handle consumer data, does it? You have government contracts, military communications, critical infrastructure management systems. Marcus felt cold understanding wash over him. You're saying someone is trying to use Technova as a gateway to attack national security systems. I'm saying someone already has. The breach last week was just the beginning. They're planning to use your compromised systems to launch attacks on power grids, financial networks, maybe even defense systems. Who? Elena pulled up another screen, this one showing a communication intercept. That's what took me so long to figure out, but I finally tracked the digital signature of the attack. Marcus, this wasn't some random hacker or even a criminal organization. This was state-sponsored. Someone with serious resources and serious backing. Which state? I don't know yet, but I know who orchestrated it from this end. Elena's face was pale as she pulled up one final screen. Marcus, the inside information they used to compromise your systems. It didn't come from me. It came from someone with even higher access than I could have gotten through you. The screen showed a detailed analysis of the attack, including timestamps and access logs that tracked the breach to its source. Marcus stared at the data, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. That's impossible, he whispered. But the evidence was undeniable. The attack had been launched using James Crawford's executive access credentials, his oldest friend, his business partner, the man who had warned him about Elena. James was the traitor. I'm sorry, Elena said quietly. I know he's your friend. Marcus sank into a chair, feeling like the world had shifted around him yet again. Why? Why would James do this? I don't know. But Marcus, there's more. The attack is scheduled to go active tomorrow night. Whatever they're planning, it's happening in less than 24 hours. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from James. Board meeting in 1 hour. Time to face reality. Reality. Marcus almost laughed at the irony. Because reality, as it turned out, was nothing like what he'd thought it was. We have to go to the FBI, he said. With what? Evidence I gathered using illegal hacking methods? They'll arrest me before they listen to anything I have to say. Then what do you suggest? Elena was quiet for a moment, staring at the screens that held the evidence of James's betrayal. We stop it ourselves. Elena, no. You can't get involved in this any deeper. If you're caught. If I'm caught, I go back to prison. If we don't stop this, people could die. Power grids, financial systems, defense networks. Do you have any idea how many people rely on the infrastructure they're planning to attack? Marcus stood up, pacing the small space. There has to be another way. There is. You go to that board meeting, you act like nothing has changed, and you give me access to Technova's systems so I can stop this from the inside. I can't ask you to do that, You're not asking. I'm volunteering, Elena, if they catch you in Technova's systems, even if you're trying to help, it will be a violation of your parole. They'll send you back to prison for years. And if I don't try, they'll use your company to attack innocent people. The choice is pretty clear to me. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her. She was terrified. He could see that in the way her hands shook slightly as she spoke. But she was also determined, ready to sacrifice her freedom to protect people she'd never met. Why? He asked. Why risk everything for a company that you have no connection to? Elena's smile was sad and beautiful. Because it's your company. Because you built it to change the world, even if you forgot that along the way. And because she paused, color rising in her cheeks. 'Cause I love you, and love means protecting what matters to the person you care about. Marcus felt something shift inside him, a certainty that cut through all his confusion and doubt. I love you too. The words surprised them both. Elena's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, the weight of their impossible situation seemed to lift. Even knowing who I really am? She whispered. Especially knowing who you really are. Elena, you're not defined by your worst mistakes. You're defined by who you choose to be now. And who you choose to be is someone brave enough to risk everything for what's right. They kissed then, and it felt like coming home after a long journey through foreign territory. But the moment was brief, interrupted by Marcus's phone ringing with another call from the board. I have to go, he said reluctantly. I know. And Marcus? Be careful, and if James realizes we know about his involvement, he might accelerate their timeline. The board meeting was a performance that tested every acting skill Marcus had never known he possessed. He sat in the familiar conference room, looking at James's face across the table, and tried to reconcile his oldest friend with the evidence Elena had shown him. Marcus, Margaret Chen began, we need your decision. I've given this a lot of thought, Marcus said carefully. And I believe the board is making a mistake. The room erupted in surprised murmurs, but Marcus continued. The attack on Technova was sophisticated and targeted. It required inside knowledge that goes beyond anything a romantic relationship could have provided. I believe we're dealing with a much larger threat than we've realized. James leaned forward, his expression concerned. Marcus, I know this is difficult, but you can't let your feelings for Elena cloud the facts. What facts, James? The fact that the attack used executive-level access credentials? The fact that it was designed not just to steal data, but to plant malware for future attacks? The fact that this looks less like random cybercrime and more like industrial espionage or even cyber terrorism? James's face remained perfectly composed, but Marcus caught the slightest flicker of something. Surprise? Fear in his eyes. Those are all reasons why your association with Phoenix makes this situation untenable," Harold Morrison interjected. "Even if she didn't orchestrate this attack, your relationship with her makes you a security risk." "I'm not resigning," Marcus said firmly. "I'm the CEO of this company, and I'm going to find out who really attacked us and why." "Then we'll have to vote," Margaret said sadly. The vote was swift and brutal, 11-1 in favor of removing Marcus as CEO. Only Marcus voted to keep himself in position. "I'm sorry," Margaret said, "but the board has lost confidence in your judgment. James will serve as interim CEO while we search for a permanent replacement." Marcus looked at his oldest friend, who was doing an excellent job of appearing reluctant about his sudden promotion. "I'll do my best to hold things together," James said with apparent sincerity. "And Marcus, for what it's worth, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for." As Marcus left the Technova building for what might be the last time, he felt oddly liberated. The weight of expectations and responsibilities that had defined him for years was gone, replaced by something simpler and more urgent: the need to stop James before tomorrow night. He drove straight back to Elena's warehouse, his mind racing with plans and possibilities. But when he arrived, the building was dark, and Elena was gone. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "If you want to see Elena again, come alone to Pier 47 at midnight. No police, no backup, no tricks. She's safe for now, but that could change quickly." Marcus stared at the message, ice spreading through his veins. James had Elena, which meant James knew that they knew. The next few hours were the longest of Marcus's life. He considered calling the police, the FBI, anyone who might be able to help, but the message had been clear. Any attempt to involve law enforcement would put Elena in danger. At 11:30 p.m., Marcus drove to Pier 47, his hands steady on the wheel, despite the chaos in his mind. The waterfront was deserted, fog rolling in from the bay and making the streetlights look like ghosts. He found James waiting at the end of the pier, standing alone with his hands in his pockets. In the darkness, he looked like the same friend Marcus had known for 15 years. "Where is she?" Marcus called out as he approached. "She's safe," James replied. "For now." Why are you doing this?" James was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the dark water. "Do you remember when we started Technova? What we said we wanted to accomplish? We wanted to change the world." "Right. Change the world. Make technology serve humanity instead of the other way around." James turned to face Marcus, and in the dim light, his expression was almost sad. "But somewhere along the way, we became part of the problem. We built systems that spy on people, that sell their data, that give governments and corporations unprecedented power over individuals." "So you decided to destroy it all?" "I decided to give that power to someone who would use it responsibly." "And who would that be?" "Does it matter? The point is, the current system is broken. Technova, Google, Facebook, Amazon, We've created a digital surveillance state that would make Orwell weep. Someone has to tear it down so we can build something better. Marcus felt like he was talking to a stranger. James, you're talking about attacking critical infrastructure. People could die. People are already dying. Privacy is dead. Democracy is under assault. And the tech companies are the ones holding the knife. James's voice rose with passion. We had a chance to be part of the solution. Marcus, we had a chance to build something that actually served humanity instead of exploiting it. And instead you decided to commit treason? I decided to take responsibility for what we created. Marcus took a step closer. Where's Elena? James smiled, and it was the coldest expression Marcus had ever seen. Elena is exactly where she needs to be. In a location with no cell service, no internet access, and no way to interfere with tomorrow night's operation. The attack is still happening? Of course it's still happening. Your girlfriend's little investigation was impressive, but ultimately pointless. She found evidence of my involvement, but she doesn't know where the real servers are located or how to stop the attack. James, please, think about what you're doing. This isn't justice, it's terrorism. It's revolution. And revolutions require sacrifice. Marcus heard the sound of footsteps behind him and turned to see two men emerging from the shadows. They were large, professional-looking, and clearly not friendly. I'm sorry, Marcus, James said, but I can't let you interfere. You and Elena will be kept safe until the operation is complete. After that, well, we'll see. The men moved forward, and Marcus realized with crystal clarity that he was about to lose everything: his freedom, Elena, and possibly his life. But in that moment of absolute crisis, he also realized something else. He finally knew who he wanted to be. Marcus had always been a strategist, someone who thought 3 moves ahead in business negotiations. But now, faced with immediate physical danger, he found himself acting on pure instinct. As the first man reached for him, Marcus grabbed a loose board from the pier's railing and swung it hard. The impact sent the man stumbling backward, buying Marcus precious seconds. "Stop him!" James shouted. But Marcus was already running, sprinting down the pier toward the parking lot. Behind him, he heard heavy footsteps and angry voices, but adrenaline carried him faster than he'd run since college. He reached his Tesla and gunned the engine, tires squealing as he sped away from the waterfront. In his rearview mirror, he saw the 2 men reaching the parking lot just as he turned onto the main road. His phone rang immediately. James. That was stupid. Marcus, now I can't guarantee Elena's safety. Tell me where she is. Not a chance. But I'll make you a deal. Stay out of my way for the next 24 hours, and both of you will walk away from this. Try to interfere, and Elena pays the price. The line went dead, leaving Marcus alone with his racing thoughts and the growing certainty that Elena was running out of time. He drove aimlessly for an hour, trying to think of options. Going to the police was out. James had made it clear that would endanger Elena. But Marcus couldn't just sit back and let James destroy the infrastructure that millions of people depended on. Then he remembered something Elena had said about her contacts in the hacker community. If she could find evidence of James's plan, maybe her friends could too. Marcus had never thought he'd find himself in an underground hacker collective, but desperate times had a way of expanding one's horizons. Elena's contact, a tattooed woman who went by Cypher, operated out of a basement in Oakland that looked like a cross between a computer lab and a bunker. Elena's in trouble, Marcus explained, after convincing Cypher that he wasn't law enforcement or corporate security. Also, yeah, we figured that when she went dark yesterday, Cypher replied, her fingers flying across multiple keyboards. Phoenix doesn't just disappear unless something's seriously wrong. Can you help me find her? Maybe. But first, you need to understand something. Elena burned a lot of bridges when she went legit. Most of the community thinks she sold out, turned her back on the cause. The only reason I'm talking to you is because Elena saved my life once, and I owe her. What do you need from me? Cypher studied him with sharp eyes. Access to Technova's internal systems. If Elena was investigating an attack on your company, she would have left breadcrumbs. But we need to get inside to follow the trail. Marcus hesitated. If I give you access, you could do anything. Steal data, plant malware, destroy the entire company. Yeah, we could. But we won't, because Elena asked us not to. She said you were one of the good guys, even if you'd forgotten it. The trust implicit in that statement hit Marcus like a physical blow. Even after everything that had happened, Elena had faith in him. What do you need? The next few hours passed in a blur of technical jargon and computer screens. Cypher and her team worked with frightening efficiency, following digital trails that were invisible to Marcus, but apparently clear as day to them. Got something, announced a thin man called Rabbit. Elena left a hidden partition on Technova's backup servers. Looks like she was building a counter-program to neutralize whatever malware was planted in the original attack. Can you finish it? Marcus asked. Maybe. But this is advanced stuff. Elena was always the best at defensive programming. Without her here to guide us, then we have to find her. Cypher looked up from her screen. Actually, I think I know where she is. She pulled up a map of the Bay Area, zooming in on a remote facility in the hills above Silicon Valley. This is a black site server farm, she explained. Officially, it doesn't exist. Unofficially, it's where certain government agencies and private contractors run operations they don't want traced back to them. How do you know about it? Because Elena hacked it 3 years ago. It was one of her biggest scores. She exposed an illegal surveillance program being run out of that facility. If someone wanted to keep her somewhere with no digital footprint, that's where they'd take her. Marcus stared at the map, calculating distances and possibilities. It's heavily guarded? Extremely. But Elena knows that facility better than anyone. If she's there, she might have found a way to communicate or escape. Or she might be walking into a trap designed specifically for her. Cypher shrugged. Phoenix always liked long odds. As dawn broke over the Bay Area, Marcus found himself driving up a winding mountain road toward a confrontation he wasn't sure he'd survive. In the passenger seat of his Tesla sat a duffel bag full of equipment that Cypher had insisted he might need, devices whose purposes he didn't understand but trusted might help him save Elena. The facility was exactly what he'd expected from a black site: imposing, anonymous, and surrounded by enough fencing and security cameras to stop a small army. Marcus parked a mile away and hiked through the woods, using a route that Cypher had marked on his phone. The good news is that most of their security is designed to keep people out, not in, she'd explained. If Elena is being held there, she might have found ways to move around inside. Marcus reached the perimeter as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows through the trees. The facility looked quiet, almost abandoned, but he knew that was an illusion. Somewhere inside, Elena was waiting. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. North Wall, service entrance, 15 minutes. Come alone. Marcus's heart leaped. Elena. He made his way around the facility's perimeter, staying in the tree line until he spotted the service entrance she'd mentioned. It was a small door marked with warning signs about authorized personnel only. Elena emerged from the shadows like a ghost, her face pale but her eyes bright with determination. "How did you—" Marcus started to ask. "Long story. We need to move fast. James is planning to activate the attack in 6 hours, and I've only managed to neutralize about 60% of the malware. How do we stop the rest?" "We don't. We turn it against itself." Elena pulled out a tablet that Marcus recognized as one of the devices Cypher had given him. "Your hacker friends finished the counter program I started, and if we can upload it to the right server, it will trace the attack back to its source and shut down the entire operation." "What's the catch?" "The catch is that the server is inside the facility, in a room that requires biometric access that only James has. And the upload has to be done manually, from inside the server room." Marcus felt cold understanding wash over him. "It's a one-way trip." "For me, yes. But you can get out, and once the upload is complete, you'll have about 10 minutes before security realizes what happened." "Elena, no. I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself for this." "It's not a sacrifice if it saves people. And Marcus, this is who I am. This is who I've always been. I fight for what's right, even when the cost is everything." Marcus pulled her close, breathing in the scent of jasmine and paint, and something indefinably Elena. "There has to be another way." "There is no other way. But Marcus, listen to me. When this is over, when the truth comes out about James and the attack, don't let them destroy what you built. Technova can be what you always dreamed it could be, a force for good in the world. Promise me you'll make it better." Promise me you'll be there to help me." Elena smiled, and it was beautiful and heartbreaking. "I love you. Remember that. Whatever happens next." Before Marcus could respond, alarms began blaring across the facility. "They know I'm gone," Elena said. "We're out of time." What followed was the most terrifying hour of Marcus's life. Elena led him through service tunnels and maintenance corridors with the confidence of someone who had studied every blueprint and security feed. Behind them, they could hear guards searching, getting closer with each passing minute. "There," Elena whispered, pointing to a heavy door marked with biometric scanners. "That's the server room." "How do we get past the security?" Elena held up a small device that looked like a smartphone. "I lifted James's access card when they brought me here. The biometric scanner is tied to the card, not to physical characteristics, and it's a vulnerability I discovered years ago, but never reported." The scanner beeped softly, and the door clicked open. Inside, the server room hummed with the sound of hundreds of computers working in perfect synchronization. "Which one?" Marcus asked. "Oh." Elena consulted her tablet, cross-referencing server locations with the facility's layout. "Third row, server 17. That's the hub that controls the entire network." They moved quickly through the maze of equipment, Elena's fingers flying over her tablet as she prepared the counter program for upload. "Almost there," she murmured. "Elena, wait," Marcus caught her arm. "Come with me. We'll upload the program and run together." "You know that's not possible. Someone has to stay to make sure the upload completes. If it's interrupted even for a few seconds, the attack will proceed as planned." Marcus heard footsteps in the corridor outside, growing closer. "I can't lose you," he said desperately. "You're not losing me. You're setting me free." Elena reached up and kissed him, pouring everything she felt into that moment. "Now go. Let me finish this." Marcus ran. He ran through corridors and past confused guards and out into the morning sunlight. Behind him, he heard shouts and alarms and the sound of Elena's tablet completing its upload with a soft chime that might as well have been a funeral bell. He made it to his car and drove until he reached a safe distance, then pulled over and called the FBI. Within hours, the facility was swarming with federal agents. James was in custody, and the attack that would have crippled the nation's infrastructure had been stopped. But Elena was gone. The official story was that Phoenix had been killed resisting arrest after breaking into a secure government facility. The truth, that she had sacrificed herself to prevent a cyber attack that could have killed thousands, was classified at levels Marcus would never see. At Elena's memorial service, held in the same gallery where they'd first met, Marcus spoke to a room full of people who had loved her in different ways. Artists and activists, reformed hackers and FBI agents who had hunted her and ultimately come to respect her. "Elena once told me that we're all islands," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the grief threatening to overwhelm him. Surrounded by noise and connection, but fundamentally alone. But she was wrong about one thing. Some people have the power to build bridges between those islands. Elena was one of those people. She connected with others not despite her flaws and mistakes, but because of her courage to be vulnerable, to be real, to be human. After the service, James's lawyer approached Marcus with an offer. "My client wants to make a deal," the man explained. "Full confession, cooperation with federal investigators in exchange for a reduced sentence." What does he want to tell me? That Elena Reeves was never supposed to die. That the plan was to frame her for the cyber attack and let her take the blame while the real perpetrators escaped. That her death was unintended consequence. Marcus felt rage build in his chest, hot and pure. An unintended consequence. "Mr. Crawford wants you to know that he never meant for anyone to get hurt. That this was about ideological differences, not personal animosity." "Tell Mr. Crawford," Marcus said carefully, "that his ideological differences just cost him the only person who ever really believed in changing the world for the better. And tell him that I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure everyone knows exactly what Elena died for." 6 months later, Marcus Sullivan returned to Technova as CEO. The board, chastened by the revelation of James's betrayal and the company's near brush with being used as a weapon against American infrastructure, welcomed him back with newfound respect for his judgment. But Marcus returned as a different man. The first thing he did was implement new security protocols developed from Elena's counter-programming techniques. The second was to establish the Phoenix Foundation, dedicated to supporting young programmers and artists who wanted to use technology to fight injustice. On the anniversary of Elena's death, Marcus visited her grave with a single jasmine flower and a printed copy of Technova's latest transparency report. The company now published detailed information about its data collection practices, refused contracts with authoritarian governments, and donated millions annually to digital rights organizations. "You were right," he said to the quiet headstone. "We did need to tear down the old system, but you also showed me that sometimes the best way to destroy something is to build something better in its place." As he walked away, Marcus felt his phone buzz with a notification. An encrypted message from an anonymous sender. "The work continues. Phoenix may be gone, but the fire still burns. Thank you for keeping the promise." Marcus smiled, looking up at the sky where clouds were gathering for an afternoon storm. Elena had taught him that love wasn't about possession or permanence. It was about transformation, about becoming worthy of the faith someone placed in you. The rain began to fall as he reached his car, but Marcus didn't hurry. He stood there, letting the water wash over him, thinking about islands and bridges and the courage to build connections in a world that seemed designed to keep people apart. Elena was gone, but her legacy lived on in every line of ethical code Technova produced, every privacy protection they implemented, every young activist they supported through the Phoenix Foundation. She had changed him, and through him, she was still changing the world. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about two people finding their happy ending. Sometimes they're about one person loving another enough to become who they were always meant to be. Elena had seen the man Marcus could become, and her belief in him had made that transformation possible. As Marcus drove back toward the city, he thought about the future Elena had envisioned, a world where technology served humanity instead of exploiting it, where profit came second to principle, where love was stronger than fear. It was a future worth fighting for, and fight for it he would, carrying Elena's memory like a flame that would never be extinguished. Building bridges between islands of solitude until the whole world was connected not by surveillance and data mining, but by understanding and hope. The story of Marcus and Elena ended with her death, but the story of what they had built together was just beginning. And in that continuation, in that legacy of love transformed into action, perhaps there was a kind of immortality after all.